Hello guys, it's Spalding here and welcome to another deck profile and tournament report video. And this time we will be talking about the unlimited format on the Finnish Mega Meet. And I'm once again joined by Darksigner. Hello Darksigner.
Hello guys, glad to be back here.
And in the last uploaded video, we talked about the DM 01 till 03 tournament, and this time, as I said, about the unrestricted format. And obviously, when we talk about unrestricted, there is, in my opinion, or in our opinion, the best deck in the format, which is Bombazar Blue. And we both of us also played Bombazar Blue, and we only had like two differences in our deck. In the DM 01 to 03 format, we had one difference. Now we have two differences, so we have like common like understanding like of the deck. And mostly I was pretty new to the Bombazar environment. I like didn't play that any at all. Maybe I think we played like in the afternoon, or where we tested the 1 to 3 decks. We played like one Bombazar mirror match, and then we were like, yeah, okay, it's like pretty uh, maybe autopilot, I
Simple.
would say. Yeah, pretty simple, and
Yeah.
that's it. And we yeah, but mostly the deck I like copied from you. So maybe. And we have my list here, and I will like quickly switch like to your list, and maybe you can like start talking about the list a bit.
Yeah, I think like you said, the mirror match is pretty simple. It's compare hand and compare shields. It's not really, it's more like a mini game, not really uh, like skill intensive game.
Mm,
I think like talking about the list, my main experience is in the TCG Plus tournaments
mm,
where Bombazar is legal, but we also play with DM13 and OCG exclusives, so the power level is a bit higher there.
mhm,
But I was inspired by that format to play Essence Elf, which
mhm,
has seen play like historically in some Bombazar lists. I've definitely seen a list play Essence Elf, but not like really focus on it instead of Gonta. The main selling point is that you can activate Cyberbrain turn 3, and we only have Energy Stream. But I think it's still very good because it speeds up your like speed in the mirror match, and where the Gonta players they are a bit slower to set up their board.
mhm,
Um, yeah, Essence Elf really is for the mirror match, but I think the conclusion after the tournament is that like Ruby is a bit of a problem.
mhm.
So like going over Belix, Gonta helps. Doesn't help sadly with the biggest problem, Tajima.
Yeah.
And I think uh, in theory, like the split of the speed attackers between Twin Cannon and Pyro before the tournament was like correct, because like Twin can deal more damage if you use it in the second turn from Bombazar, but Pyrofighter can be drawn into, like if you have Hulkus or Energy Stream, you can top deck it and still play it.
Mm,
Whereas Twin, you need to top deck like a Soul Swap. Uh, so yeah, Pyro is just more life for top decks in the second Bombazar turn, and the rest of the deck is pretty standard. Like you have your standard. The almost half of the deck looks like a DM 1 to 3 deck. We still have
yeah.
Bombazar Drive, Backwalkers,
Uh,
Mushroom.
yeah.
Um,
Even Essence Elf DM2. Yeah.
yeah, even Essence Elf is technically legal. Yeah,
Seeing Wave. Yeah.
Unicorn. Yeah, maybe like I talk about the other two techs, like the Foros. I don't think much needs to be explained there, aside from like Essence Elf
Mm,
and the Searing Wave and the Unicorn Fish are like tags for different decks. Searing Wave is for the mirror match
mm,
because like as soon as the opponent has two creatures, it's already valuable to activate it. You don't need to wait until he has a big board. Like just clearing two creatures, that's basically saving you 4 shields,
yeah.
because essentially Bombazar makes them double breakers because they can take in 2 turns.
Yeah.
So yeah, saving 4 shields for one is a good deal. Also, it deals with like Belix
Yeah.
like when blocker decks play Belix. And the Unicorn Fish, the theory behind it is that you go into Bombazar on 6 mana with Soul Swap, and then you will have 4 mana left. You might think that Soul Swap costs 3 mana, but it actually only costs 2 because
Yeah.
you get the creature untapped into mana. So we'll have 4 mana left, and that 4 mana is enough for Unicorn Fish to bounce an opposing Tajimal to clear your way for the attackers, and then on the second turn it still breaks the shield, so it's a nice removal tool for Tajimal as well as an attacker.
Yeah.
And yeah, that's
Yeah.
the theory behind that.
Yeah. Maybe like one more point to the Gonta stuff is that of course it's a multi-brick, so if you play like 4 Bombazar, 4 Gontas, sometimes you can just brick on the
Yeah.
multis. And but another positive thing is that it dodges like burst shot. Pretty much your whole like board dies to burst shot except the Bombazar. Or maybe like the Twinken you play after. So when the Ruby deck plays like 4 burst shots, you just pray to dodge it somehow. This is also something, but yeah, I still think that you don't want to play like that many fire cards to make like the Gonta consistent. And then if you can't really play 1 or 2, you need to play like 4 Gontas to have the fire count to play him turn 2. And I thought about like playing 2 Essence Elf and 2 Gontas, and then hope to, I don't know, see both and then decide on what the matchup
The
is.
right time.
Yeah, and if you play against Ruby, you play Gonta. If you play against, I don't know, anything else, you play Essence Elf. But this doesn't work with the color combination you have. You only have like, I mean, at the moment we have like 10 fire cards. You would need like 13, so at least 3 Gontas. But as we said, the Singwave and also the Pyrofighter might be flexed, so you could go down even lower in these cards.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
yeah. And then going back to my list, I was really like afraid of the Ruby matchup, and that's why I switched like 1 Pyrofighter Magnus to Scarlet Sky Terror, and also 1 Unicorn Fish to another Twinken. And I think going down like in both is I really liked the Unicorn Fish when I saw it. I mean, it's of course great when you play against like decks that are we saw like I think 2 or 3 FN Rush decks or like Water Dagnas, aggro decks and so on. You can play like Mushroom and then turn 3 Unicorn Fish, which is like really helpful. So maybe I would have liked like 1 more Unicorn Fish, but we also made some changes for which we talk about later, because we had like another unrestricted tournament in the Bombazat tournament. We will talk about this later, and then we also made some changes to our lists here. But I am in general, if you go into like an unrestricted format, you have like 3 types of decks you could face, and in my opinion, they're like pretty even. Like 1/3 of the playing field is playing some kind of Bombazar decks, another 1/3 is playing some kind of anti-Bombazar decks, and then another 1/3 is playing some random stuff, which is neither of those two. So against the random 1/3, which is not playing Bombazar and is not playing anti-Bombazar, you pretty much win like 95% or 90% of the time. So you don't really need to tech against like those random decks. You only really need to focus on like the Bombazar mirror and against the anti decks. So going with this like thought in mind going forward, I think you should add a bit more shield trigger, and so maybe the Unicorn Fish and the Magnus could be like some spiral gates, because all that counts in the Bombazar mirror is who sees Bombazar first, and you can't play more than 4, and who has more triggers and shields, and that's it. So and the Unicorn Fish bounce on like a random creature from the opponent just doesn't really help. Maybe it hurts you, so you don't want to bounce like the Mushroom, you don't want to bounce the Bronzan Tribe. You can bounce like Essence Elf or Gonta, but then the opponent just replays it, plays swap on it, and then Bombazar comes down anyway. So doesn't really stop the opponent. And yeah, against the anti-Bombazar decks, there are like some decks who are playing like Miraculous Truce. They're like the third twin cannon help, so you just wait on your Bombazar when your opponent just like doesn't pressure you, or they are just like on high trigger count, like Holy Awe, maybe even the Bonds of Justice if if it's like this where it taps like
Yeah, I
all
think
non-blockers.
against Truce, Unicorn Fish also gets more valuable again
Yeah,
because it's another water creature. Because if the opponent calls nature, aside from Twin Cannon and Pyro, they shut off your whole deck. Like
yeah,
Bombazar can't attack,
yeah,
all your stuff that you played early can't attack. So
yeah, yeah. And against like the Ruby deck with like all these Slash Chargers, Tajimals, and so on, there you really need some kind of like, yeah, blocker destruction. So maybe second Scarlet or even Windex is something going forward, depending on what you expect. But yeah, pretty much from that, I think like the list is, yeah, pretty like standard, set in stone. There's like, I think like 36
yeah,
cards.
maybe 36 cards
Yeah,
are like set, and then like
yeah,
like around 4 flex slots, like the third twin, the Scarlet, the Pyro, and the Unicorn.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah, somewhere around that.
Yeah. So yeah, looking at our Swiss rounds, this time I finished undefeated in Swiss in DM 1, 2, 3. You finished undefeated. And then we pretty much just switched places. We together finished like 9-1 in the unrestricted format. And then in the semi-final, you played against Macke, who managed to win
Yeah,
the tournament after all against the Ruby deck out. And I played against Water Darkness Aggro. We will go like through the deck lists later, and then we can like look at their decks.
yeah.
So we
Did
best
we face in Swiss? I think yes. You won last
um,
round of Swiss against me, right? No, no.
uh, yeah, we
What
finished
happened? Where
fourth
did I
round.
lose?
Yeah, fourth round. Yeah, in the
Oh,
mirror.
fourth round. Yeah,
Yeah,
okay, not last, but yeah. Okay. Yeah. I just tried to remember what my loss was in Swiss, but that makes sense.
yeah, yeah, and pretty much in the DM 1 to 3, like we lost in the finals in the mirror match. This time we lost in round 4 in the mirror match. So yeah, one of the losses is like, yeah, one of us like had to lose. So yeah, and then we finished second and third. So um, when we go like here 9-1, then we both won 2 games, lost 1
One.
game, so 11-3. And yeah, one of the losses were like in the mirror. So yeah, pretty good result here again for us. And yeah, let's just go like through the other decks which happened there, and then we can like check my theory where we have like 3 type of decks, like the 1/3. I don't think we will count the decks, but just in general, there should be like these 3 decks. And yeah, you see the FN Rush.
Rush I would categorize as random, because
Yeah,
if you just dig into the format a bit, you will realize that this has no chance against Bombazar.
yeah,
Because Bombazar, when you feed their hand, like I win on turn 4, like at the same rate. Like you need a God hand with FN Rush to win on turn 4, but you will always win on turn 4 if FN Rush gives you like 4 to 5
mm,
free cards in hand.
yeah, yeah. And yeah, even like, of course, the Gonta takes over all your stuff, but you don't really care. You
Yeah,
just
it doesn't
maybe,
matter,
yeah,
because as long as you don't lose against FN Rush, you automatically win, because no triggers, because yeah, only last shield volcanic arrows can do something, but yeah, that's not happening
yeah,
very often.
yeah, yeah. And then like, yeah, another like random FN something deck.
FN aggro.
Yeah, yeah. And yeah, I think most of the I mean, even in like real life tournaments, there's also the issue that not all the players like have 4 Bombazars, for
Yeah.
example, which is not something to count on, of course, in an online tournament. But yeah, this is also something where you could count on, okay, maybe it's not like 1/3 of the players are Bombazar, like even less, and there's like more like random decks in the other third. So this shifts quite a bit like in a real life tournament compared to like an online tournament. Then we had some
This
kind of
actually was performing surprisingly well. I
yeah,
think
yeah,
this was like on the bubble of topping and won the creative prize of this tournament, which is like funny to see, but it's just like defense.deck with
mm,
some finisher sprinkled in.
yeah, yeah. The Zorvats to block like yeah, the Bombazar, but
Bombazar. I
yeah,
mean, yeah, you have Skidos that dodges Searing Waves.
mm,
You have Slash Chargers. If you slash all the bombers,
yeah,
you probably win.
yeah,
Like, yeah, funny concept.
no, oh,
This is anti-Bombazar.
yeah, and it's kind of surprising
think
where
this was
it's
X-Boom's list because I see
ah,
the Aqua Strummers and Transmogrifies. This looks like an X-Boom list if I've
yeah,
ever seen one.
yeah, true, yeah, and there's like just like the 3v, I don't need fire because I have like 4 swaps and 4
Yeah,
Bombazars. I just swap it out and just focus on like anti stuff. And as I said, in theory, this looks like with 4 Holy Ores, like 2 Trues, also the Transmogrify where you can like randomly on like turn 3, like snipe an opponent's creature, randomly get a Bombazar and they lose.
and they
Um,
lose. Yeah,
and you can like set up your own Bombazar when you play like Strummer, and then you manage your deck there. When you play
yeah.
Transmogrify on your creature, you hit your Bombazar. So
If I,
this,
if I remember
yeah,
correctly, he faced like all the Ruby decks
mm,
and like control decks that he didn't want to face. I think that's like uh that's the bracket bad luck that you will just see in this format. I think this format is even more like matchup dependent than normal format. Like if you play the anti-Bombazar deck and you just don't face Bombazar, you can't do
yeah,
well.
yeah,
And then if you're like yeah, if you take Bombazar, you're most safe because you can win against Ruby, and also, in my opinion, can win against the counters like these as well. It's just
mm,
not very likely, but there's still a chance that you win against the list if you dodge like the truce and maybe hit like the Holy Ore on the first turn and not the second turn, stuff like that.
yeah, yeah. And as we said earlier, like in a real life tournament where not everyone has Bombazar, then you go like pretty much anti-Bombazar. It's not, yeah, it's not like I mean, Ruby deck won the tournament, so but Ruby deck can also win against all these random decks too,
Yeah,
with just a normal deck
Ruby
out game
has
plan.
Ruby has this nice middle ground that it's anti-Bombazar without being like all in anti. I need to play
Yeah,
Holy Horse, Truce,
yeah,
like bricky cards that don't do much on their own.
yeah,
It's just anti enough that you win slightly, but still like cohesive against everything else.
yeah, mm. Yeah. Another FN
Another
rush.
FN rush that can win in this format. Yeah.
No, yeah. So,
Fire Dark Armoloids. Okay,
mm,
haven't seen those in a while.
no. Yeah, one of the Ruby deck outs.
One of the
This
rubies. Yeah.
was not Marcus list, I think.
No, because yeah, no, this was someone else.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. But
It's
yeah,
still, yeah.
for
You have all the good
Tajima,
stuff.
for Slash Shot, yeah, for Burst Shot, for Pit, like for defense, even another Magma Rex, yeah, this looks pretty tough for for Bombazar deck to beat, yeah. Um,
Yeah, that's grip slash Phobos.
yeah,
Which is, I think, this kind of deck has potential because this deck type does very well into Ruby,
mm,
and then also has like the anti-Bombazar cards.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
it's kind of like an anti-Bombazar that doesn't die to Ruby,
Yeah.
which I think is has potential. I think this list isn't like optimized, but
Mm.
like the concept on its own is pretty good in Bombazar format, I think.
Yeah. Yeah. I Yeah, just quickly looking through the deck, like with only two files, there's like a really issue also against Ruby deck out. I think you
Mm.
should play like four file and the one morbid to like, because Ruby is, I think, popular in this kind. I
Mm.
mean, not that popular that it's like the most amount of like decks is. It's still the most amount of still some abundant decks and Bombazar, but Ruby is still like if you just go by deck type and not by like random Bombazar, anti-Bombazar, then it's still pretty popular. So I think four file should be nice here. And yeah, Crimson Hammer is also debatable, but I get the idea of like um, early killing all those stuff that could be like Soul Swap Father for the Bombazar,
Mm.
Essence Elf, and so on. But yeah, as you said, the concept is interesting.
This is the Anna abomination.
Yeah, yeah,
This
pretty.
is clearly anti-Bombazar.
Yeah, and I think you played this deck also in the Bombazat
Yeah,
tournament with the Nariel Jilbaka. I remember seeing also the Bonds of Justice. Um, yeah, Holy Awe.
I
There's
played him during Swiss in this
mm,
tournament. I can say like it was very hard to play through that because this was the game where I played like the most slow out of all the
mm,
games. Bombazar games tend to be quick, um, but this was like very long grindy match because I had to think so much about when to bounce and go in because you can't just like play your Unicorn Fish and Aqua Surfer. And if you can't capitalize afterwards, he will just replay his E-cuts and Pala and
mm,
Narya and whatever. So it was really hard to know when like this bounce or removal is enough now so I can try to go for game
yeah, yeah,
and when to hold off and wait a bit because his deck isn't really proactive. Like you see the one Fortress Shell,
mm,
but aside from that, like yeah, the Rias engine, but yeah, it's not really that consistent in this high deck count.
yeah,
So yeah, uh, luckily you have the time because his deck just defends itself.
yeah,
But it was really hard, and I remember one of the games that I won against him. I hit Bonds or Holy Awe, one of those two, in like the first turn, where it was like a 50-50. He had like two shields left. I had one attacker left, and I hit the Holy Awe in
mm,
the first one, and then I got my second turn, attacked the last shield, which wasn't the trigger, and won. Like
yeah,
that
yeah,
was like a 50-50 moment where if I just attack the wrong shield, um, I lose because I hit
yeah,
the Holy Awe and last shield.
yeah,
So yeah, luck was on my side as well in this matchup.
yeah. But I think which he's not playing like any Miraculous Truce here, but he played it in the Bombazat um, format
Mm.
tournament. I
Yeah, I
think
think it's
the
better than Bonds.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah, because even if you, as you said, hit it like in the first round, it still does something like in the second
Yeah, yeah.
round in the extra turn. Yeah, yeah, another FN
Another
rush.
F1 rush.
Quite a lot of
I
those.
think like I get the people. I get the what's going on in their head. They're like, I don't know this format. Bombazar is like broken. Let me try to counter it with like my broken deck because like clearly in like normal format, FN Rushes is like unarguably a very good deck.
Mm,
Um, so, but yeah, it just loses like auto loses to Bombazar, which is the problem. I think it has a chance like against Ruby and the like other random decks, but
mm.
also like you also get hit by the anti-Bombazar decks because they counter you as well.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. All those Ruby decks with like all those blockers, maybe even like four Belix for Tajimal, for burst, and so on. And also four snare or three snare. It hurts. Yeah. Water Nature aggro, yeah.
Water Nature. This also looks like an Ana deck, but isn't.
Yeah.
Oh, damn, I played this. This was like, I think, my round 1 or round 2 matchup. And it's like 80 or 100 cards.
Mm.
It's like Fire Nature Rush thrown together with like Survivors and Death Phoenix. And I actually lost the game to the deck because he had like an FN Rush curve with like 80 or 100 cards. Like he had the Sniper or Polygon, Quixotic, and Gonta, and it just beat me down, and I didn't see the combo, so I couldn't punish him.
Yeah. Yeah. If you don't see like any shield trigger and if you don't see Bombazar, which is highly unlikely when you get like 4 or 5 shields, then yeah, you can't do anything.
It's funny also, like next game I think he got like Death Phoenix out, but yeah, just didn't matter because I could ignore it and just win. But yeah, he just threw together 2 decks like Death Phoenix and FN Rush and mixed them.
Nice. Yeah,
This looks like Mr. Buzzard's deck.
Yeah.
I was very close to bringing this to his tournament. But yeah, I just had consistency issues. Like if you don't, it's the typical normal fortress problem, or like any nature control. If you don't see the games where you see Bronzam and the games where you don't, like they are so different. And yeah, in testing I didn't see Bronzam enough where I said, okay, I give this like a chance.
I mean, it's pretty nice because like you play Soul Swap yourself, so if the opponent chills on like 5 mana, so you can't swap out the Bombazar, then like 1 Plague pretty much seals the game. Then the opponent can't rebuild really. So 1 burn, if you survive until like 7 mana, and play a Plague on like the opponent's, I don't know, Essence Elf and whatever, then yeah, you pretty much win the game. But if you don't and you don't see like the Brosam tribe and your Tajima gets removed, then you just sit there and you don't have like these high impactful shield triggers where it could
only
like
single target removal.
Yeah. So
yeah, I think the concept is good because like Tajimal and Soul Swap are so oppressive against Bombazar because Tajimal sits there and needs an answer, but the answer needs you to go above 6 mana, and then Soul Swap just swaps your Bombazar out, and then you cry.
yeah.
So it's like I have to remove Tajimal, but by doing that, I open myself up to getting Soul Swap. So yeah, this is the main selling point of the deck. And then yeah, also Plague is just a broken card.
Yeah. No, another
bomber. I think this is Sidelios list. This looks very clean.
Yeah, it's pretty much the same as your list.
I think it's
or as our
card
list,
for card,
but
my list,
only
except the
Gonta.
Gontas and Essence Elf. Yeah, we agreed on all the black slots. He just had like the quote unquote old Gonta version, not the Essence Elf. But yeah, I think doesn't make too much of a difference. It's just like that Essence is better in the mirror and Gonta's a bit better into Ruby.
Yeah.
Some 100-card survivor.
Yeah. Oh. Yeah. Yeah, and this is
Marcus Ruby,
list.
this is the winning list. Yeah. I play like we both played him. Maybe I will start because I played him first before you played him. I won in Swiss against him because one of the 2 games I won, he just absolutely threw away due to inexperience. Like he was at 7 mana and he could mass remove my board. My board wasn't too big, like 2 creatures. And then like his board was, I think, open, and he had like the decision between a mass removal and sticking Bolmedius, and he was like, I play Bolmedius. Okay, my turn. Like drop creature, Soul Swap, Bombazar, kill him. And he was like, oh, I didn't know I can die this fast. He's like, I didn't play against Bombasa before this, and yeah, I didn't know this is how fast you die against the deck.
No.
And that's how I like stole a win in the match and then won another game. And yeah, in semifinals, I wasn't that lucky anymore. He didn't play like Bolmedius into a lethal board.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, I think when I played against him, it felt like pretty miserable. Even like the like Belix on turn two was like, I can't like poke for one shield.
Hmm.
Need I this needs to be removed somehow, and I don't know. It didn't feel good to get stopped by like a Belix. I mean, the Belix just stops you by like poking like one or two shields, which is like pretty crucial because all the shields you can poke there, you can, if there's like an early shield trigger, then you just don't care. If there's like an early burst shot, early Terra Pit, you are happy to break into those early on and not like when you play your Bombasa and go all in. Um, and also every shield you poke, you need like one less creature later on your Bombasa turn, and just getting stopped by like a Belix you can't poke there. I wished I had like Gonta, but if the
Mm.
Belix gets followed up by also Tajimal, then you're in some trouble. And there you really need like your Scarlet, but the problem with the Scarlet is that it's, I think, one of the first slash targets. So
Mm.
and also need to like, so you need to see him like in the first, I don't know, like 3 turns. You need to see him before the opponent plays slash charger and just charge him in mana, so it sits there pretty safely. There's no mana burn, and you can swap him out later, and then your opponent like needs to slash your swaps and not your Bombazars. So it's pretty good. But if you only play like one, then of course you don't see it. It gets slashed and so on. So going up into this count, into the anti-blocker count is pretty good. So playing more Scarlets and or Windex would be nice here. And Windex is especially nice against these type of decks because they don't play swaps. So the main problem with Windex is that you get like to 6 mana, and then against the anti-Bombasa Fortress Shell we saw, then you get vulnerable to swap. But against Ruby Deckout, you just don't care, and you would like to go up in mana, so you can even play. There were even times where I played like Twin Cannon Pass, so just like a 7 mana
Yeah, yeah, me too.
7k vanilla, which is pretty good because if it needs to be removed. If it survives, then you play Bombasa, it suddenly breaks 4 shields. So, um, yeah, and that's why I really like the additional mana, and maybe Windex is even better. But I think I like the split between Scarlet and Windex going forward because the opponent can't like overextend playing like 3 Tajimals or I don't know 2 Tajimals, 1 Belix because he needs to be afraid of Scarlet. And if he only plays like one blocker, then he needs to be afraid of Windex. So it's kind of a
Mm.
middle ground where he like needs to gamble what you have. So maybe the split is pretty nice, but
Yeah.
yeah. Yeah. And maybe I would like him to play like more Quantum Clamps and go down on the Lost Soul because there's you need early disruption against of course, Lost Soul is better against some kind of control mirror matches, but against all these random decks and Bombasa decks, Quantum Clamp is just strictly better. Um, yeah, yeah. Going forward, we have 3 decks left. Bombasa
This
Yellow,
was Anos,
no, yeah,
anti-bomb. Yeah, this is category anti-Bombasa.
yeah,
Bombasa. Like, I think he had uh, same, like, very similar path to X-Boom, where he just faced too many rubies and
mm,
not enough Bombasas.
yeah, yeah. And even if they face Bombasa, if you don't have like Truce or Holy on your shields, you just lose. So
Yeah, but it's difficult because they also have like this defensive thing where like you can't make your board very wide because then you lose to swap.
mm,
But if you don't, then you lose to a shield trigger to a
yeah.
single
Oh,
high impact. So it's really tough to fight through that.
yeah. And this was also something like on the Bombazat server. I think after the tournament, like there were some arguments of playing less than 4 Bombazar just because you don't want to, against these kind of decks, you don't want to charge the Bombazar, and if you have like 2
Mm.
Bombazars in hand, you have to charge one of them, or maybe even both. And then if you only play like 3, you don't have to charge it because you don't have it in hand, and just play like something like Terrorhorn, for example, and then you can search it later on. Um, which is nice, but the problem is against all those Bombazar and mirror decks, you need to see Bombazar, and you don't have the time to have like an extra turn where you can play Terrorhan, get Bombazar, and the next
Yeah.
turn you play it. So you really need to naturally like draw the Bombazar, and then having less than 4, yeah, just has a you're on a
I
disadvantage against other decks which are playing for Bombazar.
think it's like Azonius in normal TCG. Like, I'd rather see too many of them than none.
Yeah,
So
yeah,
play the max copies.
yeah,
Yeah. You want the highest chance to see at least one if there's multiple. Either you just don't charge or you just watch your mana that you don't leave yourself open to swap. And also think people are too afraid of like double soul swap. Like the opponent having double soul swap, the chances aren't that high. I would just ignore that.
yeah,
Like if you have butt in mana, in theory they could like from 5 swap butt in and then swap on Bombazar to make you lose the game. But this happens so rarely, I would just ignore that. And if the opponent has it, then yeah, good for them. But this won't
yeah.
happen much. Just watch out that you don't go to 6
Yeah,
against swap decks.
and also they need to be on 6 mana for the double soul swap play, and they don't want to go to 6 mana themselves because they have a Bombazar in their mana zone, so it's
Mm.
pretty unlikely scenario. Yeah. Yeah. Last 2 decks.
Bombazar black. But
Yeah.
I think I don't know about like Gajira Boot is essentially like Pyrofighter, but for 6 mana.
Mm,
I think I would cut at least those for clamps, maybe even some Locomotivers or Morbid for clamp.
yeah, yeah,
Clamp is like alongside Slash Charger, clamp is the selling point for playing
yeah,
Bombazar Black.
yeah, yeah. I
And
mean,
also then, yeah, if you play Essence Elf instead of Gonta, you make clamp even better, like turn 3 clamp.
yeah, yeah, maybe this is something like 4 slash charger, yeah, for Essence Elf, 4 clamp. And then you also have like Morbid or Corpse Charger, which can ramp you and get your stuff back if your own Bombazar gets slashed by the Ruby deck, or you can also slash yourself and then play, I don't know, Corpse Charger to get the Bombazar. So
Mm.
the main problem is you don't have like any card draw at all. So no Hulkers, no
Yeah.
Energy Stream, and then yeah, you you only play like 2 Bombazar here, so I would like to play like 4 here because you don't have any like search. I mean, you have like the Slash Charger into your Bombazar and then Morbid, but yeah, that's
And
just
in
so many
in
turns.
in this deck, I can maybe see like Terrahorn
Yeah,
because you have the Slash and Bronzam Tribe both curve into it,
yeah,
and then you can search if you need Bombazar, you
yeah,
search that. If you still have time, you can maybe search just another Terrahorn just to
yeah,
get the advantage rolling.
yeah. S- So swap the Quixotic for Mushroom, swap the Gonta for Essence Elf, kick the Cook Pollen for, I don't know, something else, and then you don't need like that many fire cards here in this version. Maybe even like Twin
Yeah,
Cannon instead of the Pyrofighter, and then
yeah,
yeah,
true. I think if you play Twin, yeah, you just don't need that many fire cards. Yeah.
yeah, just cut the 4 Cook Pollen for like 2 Bombazar, 2 Twin Cannon, and then yeah, you will get the idea. And yeah, this was Claude Alpha's deck, which managed to get 4th place. I beat him in the semifinal, you beat him in the 3rd place match. Um, the he had quite a lot of shield triggers and also the emerald to set it, but this whole deck dies to Seeing Wave, and this was like the main problem against me, where I just played one Seeing Wave and then I had so much time, and just like one Searing Wave won the game. This is where like Searing Wave is pretty good, and also like just going ruck aggro style. I in one game I didn't even play bombers. I just played a bunch of creatures, a Steering Wave, and then just attack, and then it was like game over.
Yeah, against me, like the Gatchak can be very oppressive to
Yeah.
drop and then Gatchak, but it dies to single trigger, and then I had the best one. I had first shield surfer,
Yeah.
which
Yeah.
punished the whole board. And yeah,
Yeah.
Gatchak is very good, but yeah, you need to dodge triggers, and everyone is on at least some amount of triggers because you expect Bombazar.
Yeah. Yeah, and this should also die to like the Ruby deck out stuff. And yeah, I was pretty surprised. I think if you go like to the Swiss, he finished like 3-2, not even like another 4-1. There were a bunch of 3-2 people, and he just had like, I know, better
Best tiebreaker.
tiebreakers. Yeah. Wins against tight opponent. The highly controversial tiebreaker. But he also had a good like
He had
Buchholz.
like the best
So
Buchholz
yeah.
as well. Yeah, so I think only the points differential is where he wasn't the best
No.
in the tiebreaker race.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. So anything you want to add to like the unrestricted Mega Meat tournament?
I think we can go over our Buzzard
Yeah.
tournament list.
Yeah. So we have it here. This was your list, and we talked briefly about like the tournament earlier, where I said we need like more anti 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 Bombazar cards. So we need like more cards like that destroys blockers, and you decided to play like the second Scarlet. So I think like two of those in those category, even if it's like Scarlet or Windex, is correct here, and those
I think I
just
can
replace the Magnus.
explain that because like
Mm,
in the finish in the Mega Meat tournament, the Pyro Fighters did absolutely nothing. Like
mm,
every game I played, I won or lost without it. Like the game was already over. Like Twin Cannon did the same thing, or I had
yeah,
enough creatures on board where one more attacker didn't matter.
yeah,
So I cut those for Scarlets because Ruby is such a problem. But then in Buzzard's tournament, I had like several situations where I wish I had like a chance to draw into another speed attacker,
mm,
closes out the game. So maybe you were on the right track with the 1-1 split.
mm,
Yeah, because sometimes you need the Scarlet, like one Scarlet at least. I think you have to have because of the factor that the opponent has to fear it.
mm,
Also, you can just like park it in mana, and
yeah,
like Ruby can't destroy the mana.
yeah,
Um, and then you can swap it out at the time you need it. And then like the other change I made was like Spiral Gate instead of Surfer, because I wanted to have more proactive plays when I go for my combo play,
mm-hmm,
where like with Essence Elf it only costs 1 mana, so you can bounce more Tajimals, like even more blocker hate. And against Bombazar, like the triggers, it doesn't really matter if it's a creature or not, unless they poke for 1 shield early
yeah,
to like get you down to 4 shields. Whereas
yeah,
Surfer would obviously be a bit better.
yeah. Yeah, I definitely agree like on the speed attacker part, but yeah, with Magnus the theory was you swap out Bombazar and then you still have mana to play like Magnus, for example. Or you can even play like Spiral Gate
Yeah.
if you have Essence Elf and then Magnus. But most of the time I just played a creature and played swap on the creature I played, so I didn't have like mana to even play the Magnus. And most of the time, or not most of the time, but sometimes you don't even have like Bombazar and mana, and then you draw it, and then you need to charge it, and then you only have like 5 mana instead of 6, and then
Mm.
you even have like less room to play something, and that is some also why in my version I also cut like the unicorn fish. Maybe we can go to my version. I cut the unicorn fish for like 2 more spiral gates because just the fact that if you are on 5 mana and you don't have the Bombazar in mana and then you charge it, and then you still have like time to play like the Spiral Gates. So pretty much like your idea of playing like 4 Spiral Gates instead of Surfers, but I was like still on the Surfer train, because if you don't play Unicorn, you need to play some bounce creatures, because if the opponent goes in and you with Bombaza and you have like a soul swap, and then you swap out your opponent's creature, which doesn't really matter because it can attack in the next turn anyway. And but if you have like soul swap and you have an Aqua Surfer in your mana zone, then you swap your Surfer out, and then the creature gets removed, and it pretty much saves an additional shield. So you have to have them. And as you said, when the opponent is poking you, and also against all these random decks, against FN Rush decks and so on, Surfer is pretty nice when it gets broken into, and can win us some games. So I just went like, I think we need more shield triggers, because I expect like in an online format to be more people on Bombazar compared to the real life tournament. And then I just added like 2 Spiral Gates instead of the 2 Unicorn Fish, and the rest was pretty the same. And then the one Magnus got like swapped out for the Windex, and Windex was really nice against the Ruby deck out, and I lost in the final against also another Ruby, but 3-2 instead of 3-0. Um, and if it would be like a best of 3, then yeah, I would have won 2-1. But the same problem was in the DM 1-3 tournament with our situation. So it is what it is. And Windex really overperformed there, because you can like play it on turn 5, it charges your mana, which saves you like a card you want to charge like next turn anyway, and you don't need to be afraid of an opponent's soul swap. So I think Windex against Ruby Deckout specifically is better than Scarlet, and it might even be better against like some Fortress lists which are anti-Bombazar with Tajimal, because getting to 7 mana is highly unlikely, because either your opponent is burning you, or you have a Bombazine mana and don't want to go above like 5 mana anyway. So Scarlet is pretty dead there. And with Windex, you still have the chance to be like on 4 mana, play swap and swap out the Windex, and don't be like above 5 mana. So maybe going forward, I would play even 2 Windex and cut the 1 Scarlet, but not sure there. And yeah, I also missed like some kind of speed attacker going into the second turn, but yeah, this is a kind of niche situation, because Pyrofighter Magnus and Twin Cannon both are really good against Ruby Deckout, where it dodges Burst Shot, and this was like a situation in some games. But this is like highly unlikely that you are playing like all your cards out, and then you need to top deck a speed attacker somehow, and just because you need it on the second turn in a Bombazire, I don't know, when you go all in, then just adding the 1 card for this situation, it feels like a pretty like wasted opportunity to play like another card which is more impactful in more situations. But yeah, not sure. I think the list is pretty good. I think 38 or 39 cards here. We said like 36 before.
Yeah, I think I
Yeah.
still see the same flag slots of like the Spiral Gates, the Scarlet, and the Windex.
Yeah.
Maybe I think looking back at the tournament, I went a bit too heavy with the Spiral Gate over Surfer, but like Spiral Gate itself felt pretty good. So maybe even like the Searing Wave is like more of a flag slot now, because you have so much other removal, and yeah, the removal you have is like good into the mirror and against Ruby, aside from like Windex and Scarlet.
Yeah.
So yeah, and Searing into Ruby isn't that great, because Tajimal is the problem, not really Belix.
Yeah.
So I could see Searing Wave also being like a flag slot. But yeah, aside from like Searing, Spiral, Windex, Scarlet, another speed attacker, the other like 36 cards are pretty set. And then I maybe like instead of the Pyrofighter, just like the third Twin Cannon that you played in the DMF tournament, because Twin Cannon, then you can just like say, no, we just never charge Bombazar, we never play Bombazar, we play Rock Aggro.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. Also to Spirogate, like one point I wanted to add why I really liked it is like there is one specific line when you play Essence Elf into Bronze Arm, and the next turn, can do like the Fortress shenanigans and Spirogate your own Bronze Arm, to give yourself like another mana, and like if you're lucky and hit like a water mana of Bronze Arm in turn 3, you can immediately bounce it for next turn and then can go for Bronze Arm into swap for Bomber the following turn. So it's another enabler for like turn 4 Bombazar, which is nice.
Yeah. Yeah, also really like the Spiral Gates because as you said, like a 1 mana bounce anything, remove anything is pretty nice, and
Yeah.
I think
Maybe a 3-3 split. I told you earlier off
Yeah.
camera that like maybe it's the typical, I don't know which one is better, like because in some situations this one is better and some this one, maybe go for the safe route and play 3 and 3.
Yeah. I really liked the Aqua Surfer, I think in the semifinals against Anna. I just played like 3 Aqua Surfer in a row, bouncing the opponent's Nariel, and then he just like replayed this this Nariel and couldn't do like anything else because he was like on, I don't know, 6 mana or 7 mana and couldn't like double play anything, and then just having all those like water creatures out there also plays around the Miraculous Juice, which you said earlier, where Unicorn Fish is nice. And if you are not on Unicorn Fish, you need some water creatures that can attack. So and pretty much also bounce, as I said earlier, with the swap play. So yeah, maybe like 3 Surfer, 3 Spirogate is nice. Um, yeah, we will see going forward. But yeah, I was pretty like satisfied with this list and not sure what I would like really change going forward. We even saw, I think, X-Boom being on APOC instead of some blocker removal. The problem with APOC is you can't swap it. So
Yeah.
it's like,
Windex and Scarlet, yeah. You can put them into mana early and then swap them out later when you need them.
Yeah. I mean, APOC is nice where it kills like 2 Tajimals, for example, but like a swapped out Scarlet also kills 2 Tajimals, and then when you swap it, you also need to be on 7 mana, which you need for APOC, and then you can also play something else in this turn with only 2 mana swap compared to 7 mana APOC. But of course, APOC also helps in like clearing some other creatures from like random decks, but their Searing Wave is just better where it comes down like turn 4. But yeah, I don't really like the APOC, but yeah, maybe as we said before, maybe like a Terrahorn somewhere could be nice where it could search either Bombazar or some sort of blocker removal. But then it gets like vulnerable to Cranium Clamp, and then you lose your creature you searched and you can't get it back from the graveyard. So it's just better to naturally draw into your blocker removal than to search it. But yeah, I think not many people are playing like Bombazar format. So and from the past, like in past tournaments in 205 or something, the decks were like pretty unoptimized, and I think there's still a bit of room to optimize the decks. But I think we are hitting like, I think, a wall where there's only like 1 or 2 or 3 changes, and then that's it. There's not much innovation going forward in this format.
It's like almost FN Rush level where only like the last 2 to 4 slots are being changed around the meta environment you expect. Like, do you expect more mirrors, or do you expect more anti-decks like Ruby or like anti-Bombazar with yellow stuff? And that's basically it. But yeah, also not much innovation happening, like I said, because there aren't many tournaments for this format. Also, I agree with that. I think this is like nice to play casually every few months, but as like a competitive environment, I think you will be burned out really fast because it's so like I don't know if luck is the correct word, but a lot of coin flips happening, like your matchups, and then like you have to commit into suboptimal plays because if your opponent has like the Bombazar combo, you have to commit now, even though you lose to one shield trigger and
Yeah,
stuff
yeah.
like that.
It just gets like frustrating pretty fast. Then when you are forced to do something because the opponent will kill you like next turn, it doesn't feel like great from a playing point of view. And you don't want to be forced to do something just because the opponent
Yeah,
threatens to kill you out of nowhere when you still have 5 shields. This is
yeah. Like
something like,
I have to take this 20% chance at the win, because if I don't, then my opponent wins like 80-90%.
yeah, yeah, yeah. And yeah, that's why like more shield triggers could be nice in the mirror match, because the opponent is forced
Yeah.
to go in earlier, and then having additional shield triggers just helps there. Um, yeah, but uh, I'm completely agreeing with you that once every like twice a year could be nice to play something like this, but not more. Yeah. All right, so I think this was our like final conclusion to like the format going forward. And um, yeah, do you have anything more to add to this point?
No, I think I'm happy with our list. Like, we evaluated like the core is solved, and then it's just like the last few tech slots that you can toy around with. But
Yeah.
pretty happy with the list, and I think um, overall this is like the best deck to perform well with. You won't be like if you play to win, maybe you are better with like anti-Bombazar or Ruby or something, that, and then just like high roll with your matchups.
Mm,
I think then you have a better chance to win. But like if your goal is to top, then like Bombazar, you will have like the best chances into all of the playing field. And
no.
yeah, like this is my assessment for like the deck choice that you can make within the format.
Yeah, and even you have the ability to play around the anti-Bombazar decks where you know your opponent is on like 4 Holy Ore, 4 Bonds of Justice, 4 Truths. Just don't play Bombazar
Yeah,
and
yeah.
move
I
on. Your
think
deck is good even
people,
without it.
yeah, I think people overhype the anti-bombers. I think on average it's closer to a 50-50 than it is a winning matchup for the anti-Bombazar deck.
Mm,
If you play enough matches, I think Bombazar can play through the anti-decks pretty well if you know what you're doing and just don't attack blindly.
yeah. Well, all right. So again, if you are interested in playing with Bombazar yourself, there's the TCG Plus tournament, which are being hosted by our Finnish comrades. So you can also write us. We will send you the link to the TCG Plus server there. If you are interested in playing without Bombazar, then join our monthly tournaments on the IDC server, where we are usually around, yeah, I would say 40
Yeah,
players.
40 is pretty common nowadays. Yeah.
Yeah, which compete like who's the best Duel Masters player in the month, and gather some points for a championship where you can also win prizes. So feel free to check out our server, contact us on Discord, we will send you an invite link. And that's it for us today, and we will see you in our next video. Bye bye.
Bye.